Welcome one and all to another edition of the Defo Show with Lubie here on the 5 Reasons Sports Network, brought to you by Water Cleanup of Florida. The rains, the heat, the humidity, not fun to walk in, not fun to run in, and not the greatest thing, honestly, for our home or office. But no worries, Water Cleanup of Florida is there for you to fix any problems you have, water or fire issues. They can also prevent it and make it look brand new. Again, as I say each and every time I join you, Water Cleanup of Florida, with over 60 years of combined experience between Michael, Robert, George, their entire team. They will eliminate all problems, water or fire, issue, damage, wise, and they also will make it look brand new with certified, insured contractors on their staff. Water Cleanup of Florida, 954-579-0356, 954-579-0356. Check them out on their website, WCUFL.com, at Water Cleanup FL on the socials. My wife and I, they were fantastic with us with our townhouse, and they'll do the same thing for you. Water Cleanup of Florida. If you have the schmutz, they have, when it comes to water or fire issues, they damage, obviously. They have the guts. The Miami Dolphins haven't really been gutsy, or they've been very schmutzy, haven't been very gutsy. We talked with Miami Dolphins columnist Chris Perkins today about the Dolphins, the Tua concussion issue. Where do the Dolphins go forward? And a little bit of the NFL here, the Defo Show with Lubie on the 5 Reasons Sports Network with Chris Perkins.
Chris Perkins going to join us here. And thank you, Chris, for saving me on the Bury Your Bookie show, because I went the opposite way. I had Dolphins winning in the over. We're at least looking at salvation last Thursday night with the over, as it's 31-10 with 9 minutes to go in the fucking third quarter, Chris. And Tua goes down. I would imagine you've written much and discussed much about this. Where are we at? We just talked with Brett Tessler, and there's no way to know. But it sounds like, it seems like the direction of the conversation now is that Tua doesn't plan to retire, and he's just thinking about how he can come back.
Yeah, and you know what? That's kind of the way that I've been going the whole time. I didn't think that he would retire, but I've still said, the worst answer I can give on a radio show or a podcast, I don't know.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, I don't know.
Well, I don't know how anybody could be expected to have, exemplary knowledge of this, because it's too vague of an issue to begin with.
Yeah, and and look, from Tua's standpoint, yes, you do have 2 kids and a family, but football is your identity. It's really, really hard to explain this to people because, and Lubie knows I met Mrs. Lubie at a party over the weekend.
Oh, yeah, good.
And at this party, by the way, the look she gave me when she met me, and you're a sports writer, and just that look of disgust.
Yes.
That look, I know that look.
I got the same look. I was working with Lubie for years while he was with this woman, and
it was a true highlight of the weekend. I know that look of disgust, that look of, not another one. But anyway, as far as Tua, I was trying to explain to some people at the party, this isn't about money, because a lot of people were like, well, he's got 50 million or whatever, I just walk away. And I'm like, it's not that simple for these guys. That you look at your job and you think, yeah, I walk away easily for that much. This is their identity. This is even more than that. And so it's very hard to explain to people. So I figured that retiring is going to be Tua's last resort. I figure he'll probably be able to find a doctor or somebody who clears him. But still, it's too early to say whether Tua is going to come back this season, at what point he'll come back this season, and what is the likelihood that he'll sustain another concussion. It's just way, way too early in the process. But I would think that Tua does return. And because the NFL is all about money, I would think that the NFL does not have a problem with letting Tua return once and if he gets medical clearance.
So I know there's protocols, and as we know with Tua, they try to keep him in the protocols as long as freaking possible. I haven't heard anything about him being put on an IR, which is at least 4 games. I haven't heard any. Has there been any discussion of that? I know McDaniel Very much like what you and Brett said is about his health. We're worried about his health. He's a starter quarterback of his family. Okay, fine. But he was very adamant saying we're not even going near thinking retirement. Okay, so you're willing to say that much. Where are we then? Like, to me, if he comes back this season, I don't see how it's in less than 4 games, personally. And I get it. It's just an opinion. But you cover the sport. You've been around the team. You were there 2 years ago. We talked with you a lot 2 years ago when that whole disaster was going on, where they kept getting it wrong, and then who knew what the hell was going on? What are the ideas being thrown out? Like, if he comes back this year, how early could it be? It's just hard. It's hard for me to fathom. He did the fucking finger thing again. As he's walking off, he's doing the finger thing. Like, it could be the easiest concussion ever. I've never seen them diagnose a concussion while the player's still on the goddamn ground. Like, they knew it was a concussion before any of the tests, before any of the questions. That's weird. Like, you're sort of admitting, yeah, it's pretty serious. And then now they're pulling back. Like, in your own estimation, if he was to return this year, how early could it be?
Again, don't know, Lubie.
Yeah, I know.
Andrew Peters here on the text line says, I think he's back in 2 weeks. Look, and
it could be, though. I'm thinking, too, short term.
I think, well, one thing that made diagnosing the concussion so easy was that fencing posture. And you talk about that's what that's a telltale sign. So I think that made it very easy to diagnose the concussion. And then he was just woozy. I mean, walking off the field, the guy was not stable. So, but, these things are funny, Lubie, because, again, if he gets medical clearance, he could be back in 3 weeks, or it might not be till December. We just don't know. And it gets into a lot of politics and perception, right? Because if 2 other quarterbacks sustain concussions in the next 2 weeks, then public sentiment is going to be like, ooh, this concussion thing. But say no quarterback sustains a concussion in the next 2 weeks, and Tua gets medical clearance, and you hear reports that he's upbeat around the facility, well, then maybe public sentiment backs off a little bit. And people are like, well, I don't really like this, but he seems fine. He's been cleared medically. It's his life. Let him play. So, again, the NFL is probably going to do what gets them the most money. I don't know what Tua is going to do. I think he's going to lean towards continuing to play. And I think the Dolphins would lean toward letting him continue to play, because that's their best chance to capitalize on what they built under Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer with Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But Lubie, I could see him coming back. It would be hard for me to see him coming back before the bye, just because of his health, his history, and public sentiment. But at this point, I'm not going to rule it out. I would say that there's a very, very slim chance he's back before the bye. And off the top of my head, I think their bye is week 6?
Yeah, it's very early.
I think they play 5 games and then the bye. But I would have a hard time seeing him come back before the bye. But boy, I could definitely see him coming back this season.
That's what I was feeling. Not that I have any great insight into it. Obviously, I don't. But just seemed like from the look of it and all of the conversation that you've heard since, that this guy was probably going to give it another shot. And I thought it might be sooner than later. You covered a lot of boxing, Chris, back in the day. And they could be in the corner, go, how many fingers do I have up, champ? After he got rocked a couple of times. And the guy would be holding up 1 finger, and the champ would go 3. And you go, okay, you're good to go, man. That's the way that works. I keep thinking of James Woods any given Sunday, where he's going to play, no problem. Well, I think we'll see him out there, and if we're going to make a prediction on it, that makes perfect sense, right? Sit him out a couple of weeks, have the bye week, and boom, give him a shot to come back if he's back practicing again. All right, yesterday NFL, a wild day all the way around. I would have had a tendency to believe that New Orleans thing was a facade after they smoked the Carolina Panthers in week number 1.
Yeah.
They come right back and do it to the Dallas Cowboys, who never lose at home. They had won 16 straight at home, the Cowboys, as much as people like to see them lose. They weren't according them that pleasure on home games the last 2 years. Cowboys looked really good in week number 1, and New Orleans just takes it to them. I mean, literally drives them into submission. in that game. Are the Saints to be all of a sudden regarded in another light? And could it be as simple as one of our good friends speculated as putting Kubiak in as offensive coordinator?
I'm not convinced on New Orleans after 2 weeks. I am the atypical football writer, football fan, where I'm not going to be thrilled after 2 weeks or 6 weeks. I still regard New Orleans as, maybe a playoff team. We'll see. I'm just not convinced. And look, as I keep saying, that the league has changed, right? Because now that you see that the veterans don't do a whole lot in preseason games, they get their work in the joint practices, and that's pretty much it. Even during training camp, the vets aren't getting a whole lot of work. Now, the Dolphins take that to an extreme, but that's been the league-wide trend the last few years, and as a result, these first 2 or 3 games are almost like preseason extended. It's kind of like, well, let's see what works. And everybody's in the same spot, right? It's not like, this team was tackling for 6 weeks, and so they're better tacklers. Everybody kind of backs off in training camp. So I really do think the first 2 and 3 weeks of the season, for maybe the previous 2 or 3 years and for the foreseeable future, that's going to be your real preseason. Now, that's not to say you're going to be playing draft picks in games 1, 2, and 3, but it's to say you're going to see with your veterans what really works. The stuff that 10 years ago you would have found out in that third preseason game. Remember the dress rehearsal where you're going to play into the third quarter.
Deal,
yeah, that's kind of what the first 2 or 3 weeks are now.
That was funny how much attention we used to put on that third preseason game. This is it. I did all of those hideous 4-hour pregame shows before preseason games. And you're sitting there. I probably had you on many times trying to fill like about 45 minutes. Hey, Chris, what about this third string backup long snapper? I mean, that's one of Jason Cole's theories, that you're really looking at teams kind of putting things together. And yet I can't help but think that I keep hearing this number. I think it's 6% of teams that started out 0-2. Now, I mean, it's only recently, including the 17-game season, but 6% of teams that start out 0-2 make the playoffs, which really seems absurd. Is it really that low? Is that possible?
Yeah, well, that's a 2-year sample size, right?
No, they've been going back like 5 years on
like
this, but I guess it's the last 2 years included 17 games, which you would think it would not be as devastating a blow to lose the first 2 in a 17-game season. I mean, you still got 15 left. Lubie's got something for you, Perk, here.
Well, I was just going to bring back to the Dolphins because the Tua thing is front of mind. It's what everyone's saying. But before he got hurt, they weren't playing well, including Tua. The defense was sort of okay. Look, if you look, really, most of the Bills' scores, except for one, came because the defense was put in utterly ridiculous situations, and that was the same thing versus the Jags. So the defense actually wasn't horrendous as people may think. The defense sort of was okay. The offense has been a total mess, just a total mess. I keep bringing it back to this man, and look, he's fun, he's different, he's young, he's now embracing the Miami culture when you look at his look now compared to the way he looked 3 years ago. And I get it, he doesn't pick the players, but all I've ever heard is that he has involvement in the picking of the players. He's the one that supposedly, with the wonderful Chris Greer, was happy about this offensive line. He's the one that believed in this offensive line, which I still don't understand how any human being could say that out loud and not be laughed out of the goddamn room they said that in before the season, let alone now. What do you put on Mike McDaniel through 1 3/4 games? Because again, once Tua got hurt, all hell broke loose. But before Tua got hurt, versus a Bills team that lost a ton of players in the offseason and had injuries on top of that, the defense was snuffing you out. I get it's early, but it looks very similar to the last 2 years when things go tough for the Dolphins. They have nowhere to go. They're not great at grinding out drives. Where are you with Mike McDaniel? What blame are you putting on Mike McDaniel? Honestly, that's it. Where are you with Mike McDaniel at this point, 2 seasons and 2 games in?
I'm the same point where I've always been with Mike McDaniel. Show me something. Like, I haven't seen anything. And that's kind of what I'm writing today. But look, I've pounded this topic, and Dolphins fans, screw you, Perk. You don't know what you're talking about, Perk. Look how many points we scored, Perk. And it's always, dude, this offense does nothing against good teams. Zero, zip. They just wimp out. And look, as they only allowed 20 points against Jacksonville. 17 points. I'm sorry. And you needed this last second field goal to win. Like that's unacceptable. That's what this offense repeatedly does. And Mike McDaniel does pick the majority of these players. Chris Greer did. He agreed with Joe Philbin. He agreed with Adam Gase. I can't say he agreed with Flo because that was the tank. That was kind of a tank job for a lot of that. But Chris Greer does not have an overarching philosophy of we're going to be a strong defensive team and we're gonna get players to that extent. Well, what does my head coach say? Okay, that's what we're going with. And that's what we see here with Mike McDaniel. And it's very much a one-dimensional offense. And I hammered on this point just how they were 1-6 against playoff teams last year, 10-1 against non-playoff teams, and 8-0 last year when Tyreek got 100 or more yards, 2-7 when he didn't. 0-1 this year when Tyreek doesn't get 100 yards, 1-0 when he does. You're in the same spot. It's the same offense. And here's the other dimension of this, Lubie. We're going to see right now, what about player development, right, with Skylar Thompson? And what about, is this a quarterback-friendly offense or a Tua-friendly offense? You have this big competition throughout training camp between Skylar and Mike White. We're putting them in difficult situations. Okay, here's a difficult situation. Let's see what happened. Let's see what you learned. Let's see if you made the right choice. This is a huge referendum on Mike McDaniel and the whole system that he's brought in here. Great question, Lubie, because that, to me, that's kind of what this boils down to was this whole thing built on one player and kind of this almost, I don't want to say a gimmick, but getting the ball out quickly and getting the ball to Tyreek. Like, can you win with your defense, with your run game, with your edge rushers, or could you only win one way, beating inferior teams?
Boy, I can't even begin to quantify my frustration. When Skylar Thompson came in, as I said, I had an investment in the over in this game. It's 31-10. You're on the 6-yard line, for Christ's sake, maybe even inside of that.
Yep.
And you're thinking, okay, I mean, you need to score here. You need a touchdown. And he runs the ball twice with primitive dives into the middle of the line. Then has Thompson throw a pass into the corner that goes into the stands. And then finally the guy gets sacked. And you're like, what the fuck? I mean, if you're going to bring a guy in, if he's competent at all, let him do something. Those two runs into the middle of the line of scrimmage, I literally, thank goodness the razor blades were hidden because I was ready to you can't have that little faith in the guy that you're bringing into the ball game. And when it's already a lost cause, what do you have to lose by letting the guy do something? I mean, at least letting him fling the ball down the field or into the end zone a couple of times. Even if he gets picked off, you're going to lose anyway.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'll say this, that, I do think, and I'll get ripped for this.
Yes.
I do think that the Dolphins' path to the playoffs remains the same. Because, look, last year you got there over the bodies of non-playoff teams. It wasn't like you were winning tough games and now, oh, my God. You were 10-1 against non-playoff teams. You had 11 victories. That's how you get to the playoffs under Mike McDaniel. You're 3-12 against playoff teams under Mike McDaniel, but you've made 2 playoff appearances. It's because you beat these inferior teams. Now let's see if you can do that. If you continue doing the same thing. Now, granted, you're not going to beat them with the 80-yard Tua to Tyreek play like you did against Jacksonville. This is why you've got to find another way. Can you operate the offense relying on the run game and tight ends? I mean, look, let's be honest here. The thing that Skylar has to do is the same thing that Tua did, right? Get the ball to Tyreek, get the ball to Waddle. That's what we're looking at. If we boil this offense down to its essence, you get the ball to Tyreek, you get the ball to Jalen Waddle, and you beat the non-playoff teams. And that's how you're going to get to the playoffs. So the path to the playoffs remains the same, but without Tua, obviously the degree of difficulty is up like 20 times what it was previously.
Yeah, Lubie, you want to embellish this thing.
I just So we talked to you about it before the season, and I know why your answer was what it was, because in the line of things, the line is an issue. They lost on the defensive line. The linebacker core is an issue. They needed a big receiver. They brought in a guy who probably is going to miss most of the year as their third guy in OBJ. They brought in tight ends, but are the tight so there is a long line of issues for the Miami Dolphins. But we asked you like 2 weeks before the season, after we saw an entire preseason of fucking Skylar Thompson and garbage Mike White, what are they doing at quarterback? And you're like, look, there's so much other things in front of that they're not even focusing on that. And that's clear that they weren't focusing on that. Are they now? I mean, look, you obviously need someone to back up Thompson. But, and I get there's not a big market of Pro Bowl quarterbacks available, but Tannehill's there. Russell Wilson is not getting any playing time with the Steelers.
Well, he's been injured.
Okay, well, even if he was healthy, he's not going to be playing with Fields there. Like, he's not going to have it being a backup. Are there any talk of what could they go and get? Because, I mean, what we've seen with Thompson outside of that run year one is he's not an NFL quarterback. Anyone who, outside of Mike McDaniel, that I've talked to in and outside of sports, the NFL believes that. Have you heard anything? Have you any talk of them going and getting someone else? And if so, who are some of the options they possibly could bring in as a stopgap until Tua possibly comes back?
I haven't heard any names, but they are going out there to get somebody else. That's what Mike McDaniel told us. But look, Lubie, and here again would be the total failure and breakdown of the entire system. You rewarded an injury-prone quarterback with a contract extension. Again, you have this big offseason competition between Skylar Thompson and Mike White. And now you're telling me that neither of them was good enough? Like, what were you doing this entire offseason? Like, I'm seriously, like, how could you mess this up this badly? Like, you had a whole offseason to get another quarterback, and you chose not to. And now here you are, and you're looking at two guys with Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle, and you're saying that neither is adequate? This is a failure by coaching. This is a failure by management. This is not on Skylar. And like, how do you emerge from preseason with a backup that's not NFL caliber, and you're starting an injury-prone quarterback? Like, Joe Philbin wouldn't do this. No. Like Dennis Hickey, Jeff Ireland, like none of them would do this.
Well, you were dredging up the ghosts of the past.
He's not wrong.
That's great.
It's fucking weird.
I just can't understand. Like, dude, I mean, come on. Let's get the circus music playing while we do this segment. Like, come on. This can't be possible. You've got to be able to do something with Skylar Thompson. You do. Like, otherwise, you might as well get Greer and McDaniel out of here right now. That would be a total failure on their part. Total failure.
Those first two handoffs, Chris. Stop reminding me. I mean, literally, I almost broke my television set. I'm just like, are they really going to do this here? I need one fucking score to get within 1 point. Keep the scoreboard pressure on the Bills to at least kick a field goal somewhere in the next quarter and a half. And I can't get it done. So that's the lament of a degenerate. All interesting points. I mean, if the Dolphins are 2-0 and Tua doesn't get hurt, are we having this conversation? Maybe not.
Probably not. But
all of these flies were so-called in the ointment to begin with. And unfortunately, one thing, it's kind of like one of those Rube Goldberg things where, you throw the ball and it hits the dominoes and everything, falls into place. A series of unfortunate negatives all were triggered by this Tua injury and the loss. And now, the team seems to be more in a state of disarray and a subject of being harpooned instead of being praised for putting together this marvelous roster. All right. Who looks good to you then so far, Chris Perkins, in the National Football League based on what you saw yesterday? I mean, the Saints, I think, scored on every drive that they had, every single possession. That's amazing. Derek Carr, I mean, you could say the word much maligned or the words much maligned apply to him. I don't know. All of a sudden, a resurrection, and he looks great. You're talking about Allen. I mean, remember when the Raiders left him in England and just said, you're not even getting on the team plane? You're so bad.
Right.
And Saints fans were complaining that this guy wasn't a real coach all throughout last year. He suddenly wakes up. Who's impressed you so far? I mean, the Chiefs 2-0 was very shaky, very speculative. I mean, they easily or suspect that they could have easily lost both of those games. What do you think? I mean, who's really the cream of the crop? 49ers look great first week. They lose the second week. What are we looking at here in the league?
Yeah, I think. Look, you still got to like Kansas City. They beat a quality team yesterday, Cincinnati, with some bonehead errors. I still like Cincinnati. I know they're they always start bad, right? I mean,
Yeah, 0-2
so
every year.
I still do like them. Their big thing is keeping Joe Burrow healthy, but they'll be there at the end. Baltimore, I think Defo, I might have told you to take Baltimore in the survivor pool, and here's the thing about Baltimore, and I hammered on this last year, and people, screw you, Perk, you're an idiot, Perk, which that might be true, but this team can blow a late game lead at home like no other good team in the history of the NFL, and we saw it again yesterday.
Wow.
One team that I do like, Defo, is the team that beat them, is the Raiders. And the reason being was because after last season, you remember they came in here and they lost 20-13 to the Dolphins at Hard Rock. And if not for Jalen Ramsey, with I think that was the game he had 2 incredible interceptions. And the last one that saves the game. But I had probably 5 or 6 Dolphins players tell me the following week in the locker room, we're just talking, blah, blah, blah. And I'm so impressed by the Raiders. They played as such a team. They were so together. So the Raiders are kind of one of my dark horse teams to look for. But look, New Orleans looks good. I just don't believe in them yet. I still like Detroit. I still like San Francisco. And look, I'm still gonna kind of believe in Buffalo because of Josh Allen. So, I would say the Raiders are like my underdog right now. New Orleans, you've got to watch them because of what they've done. I don't believe in them, and then the rest is the chalk for me at this point.
Don't ever read anything by any handicappers if you want to make a pick, too. I got sucker punched on that Ravens-Raiders game, changed my pick from Houston, which I would have survived, on that show that we did on Bury Your Bookie. And I kept, having this stat pop up in my head that the Raiders were just abysmal against the run in week number 1. That they gave up an incredible amount of yardage, and that the Ravens were really going to be able to capitalize on this. And if they could run the ball, well, God forbid, they unleash the real Lamar Jackson, scrambling to the outside and firing the ball down the field. And it was horrible. I was watching, I mentioned this earlier, I'm watching it on the Red Zone, and they keep coming. Every time they come back to this game, either Derek Carr is throwing some miraculous 4th down completion, or you had Lamar Jackson standing straight back in the pocket, like you were alluding to with Tua, and just getting annihilated, bulldozed over, like he was, in a commercial with Mayhem. I mean, just flattened into the turf. And they end up losing, giving up a 10-point lead that they held twice in the 4th quarter in that game.
Right.
Unbelievable. So, we got knocked out of there. And as I was saying, I'm canceling my audition to Naked and Afraid after getting knocked out in week 2 of the Survivor Pool. Chris, we love you, man. Seattle this week, coming up for the Miami Dolphins. Now you're venturing out there?
I am.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Enjoy the Northwest.
You go to the fish market? I mean, what do you do when you go out there?
Yeah. This will probably be like my, 10th or 12th time out to Seattle because, I covering the NBA. So never missed that trip when I covered the NBA.
Watching
so, I'll probably stay down there around Pike's Place Market. Have
you ever seen them throw the fish? Have you ever seen it?
Yeah.
Oh, you have? Yeah.
Yep.
And
so,
did you ever try to make a reception?
Great city.
You like it? Okay. All right, good.
Yeah, I love it up there. I love the Portland is just like 3 hours to the south, although I'm not going to get there. And then what's the Canadian city that's 3 hours to the north?
Vancouver.
Is Vancouver by there?
Vancouver, right up there. I've never been to Vancouver, but I hear it's beautiful and a great city. But Seattle, I got zero problems with Seattle. Love Seattle.
Nice, enjoy.
You have to go actually to the casino to make your bets there. So I know that from. That's usually where I ventured, and never mind the scenery in Vancouver. I wanted to know where was the nearest Native American casino, and that's what I would find on the road. And good, you're still on the Sun Sentinel expense account, which is great. If it was Lubie and if it was me, we'd be paying our own way. So enjoy the trip. All right, Chris, thanks. Always a pleasure, my friend. We'll talk to you again soon. All right, Chris Perkins, ladies and gentlemen.
It was not fun last Thursday. And yes, we're on to the next week, but we haven't talked much about it. Scary, not sure what's going to happen. They're not talking retirement. It feels like doctors will probably clear him to play. Should he play? Obviously, no. Like, the dude wasn't hit that hard. He was trying to avoid the hit and ended up not only getting a concussion, getting a clearly severe concussion. It makes it makes a lot of sense, a lot of money. We know this is players' lives, especially quarterbacks. I mean, from age 6, you're a quarterback through high school, through college, through the pros. You get this far, he gets his big contract, so it's not going to be easy to just leave. We get it. And if doctors are saying you can play, okay. And there's a lot of questions around Tua Tagovailoa, the Miami Dolphins, head coach Mike McDaniel, GM Chris Greer. We're going to talk a lot about it as this season goes on. It feels like the season's already over before it began. They have supposedly signed Tyler Huntley. Yes, that Tyler Huntley played for the Ravens. Did go to, I guess, a Pro Bowl when, all 7 or 8 quarterbacks ahead of him tapped out. A decent quarterback. He is out of South Florida. He is extremely athletic. He's like the opposite of Tua. He's athletic and not accurate. So we'll see. Maybe he can run around and create something. He's going to be probably the backup to Thompson as of now. We'll see what it is going forward. We'll see how long Tua's out. We'll see when Tua comes back. We'll talk about all of it. Check us out each and every morning on South Florida Live, both the YouTube or Facebook channel, The Defo Show with Lubie. And you can check us out here, our South Florida skewed content, The Defo Show with Lubie on the 5 Reasons Sports Network.
Hey, folks, Tony Segreto here. Let me ask you a question. What do you look for when you go out to eat? Good food, obviously, friendly atmosphere, not too loud, but good energy, reasonable prices, and a place where you feel comfortable. All those ingredients, no pun meant there, are hard to find unless you're talking about the Texas Roadhouse. You see, they encompass all of those attributes. Really, really good food, amazing atmosphere, good for a family, good for a date, or just a night out for yourself, and prices that will make you extremely happy. Their ribs unmatched, steaks hand-cut every day. Everything, and I mean everything, is made on site, including their incredible bread. It's the one day, folks, that you can forget about low-carb diets. Trust me when I tell you, Texas Roadhouse, your restaurant, your destination when you say, where should we go and eat tonight?
These days, we're all looking for comfort anywhere we can find it. Thank goodness for Landlubbers Raw Bar and Grill in Plantation, because they are making sure you are as comfortable as possible. First of all, they're not only open for delivery and pickup. All you have to do is go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both pickup and free delivery. You're going to have the best wings in the world. You're going to have a great burger. You're going to have their amazing soups. Again, Landlubbers, Raw Bar and Grill. It's nice and easy. Just go to landlubbersbarandgrill.com for both your pickup and free delivery. Thank goodness for Landlubbers for making you always feel right at home.